Hi everyone, Nick Garner here from Investmore, and in today's podcast we have Jamie Birch, who heads up all of our negotiation side of things with the consulting business, and he's also one of our shareholders, which is really cool because he's a great guy. Anyway, Jamie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Nick, thank you very much for seeing me this afternoon on the chat on the podcast.
That's okay. It's all good. We've got anyway. Let's get into it. If we go back a couple of steps
Yeah, yeah,
and we talk about what speed of completion is. Can you just talk
yeah.
us through what that actually means to people?
I think speed of completion for obviously it depends whether you're buying a residential house or an investment, but usually as a rule of thumb, people who are investing they want to get their purchase done very quickly, which enables them then to obviously make their investment work effectively for them. So, speed of purchase when you're investing, I would say, is incredibly important. You want to make your purchase as quickly as you can and start to your investments to start making you a return on your investment, basically.
For you, if you're thinking about speed to completion and budgeting and so on, what's
hmm
your advice?
Okay, I mean, the if you've decided that before, I mean, the first thing I would do obviously is have decide what is the budget you've got available and whether you're going to purchase cash or mortgage. You then want to look at what you're going to invest in, where you're going to invest in. That's the start. But I think from my point of view as an investor who's currently still trying to increase the portfolio when the opportunity comes along to sue is I think the main thing is I would say is before you do anything else, get your money in place and also pick yourself a solicitor that you're happy with and you know can do the transaction quickly. So I think from that point of view, the first thing I would do is decide on your budget, decide where you want to be, what you're investing in, get your money ready. But within that, I think also your legal team need to know that when you're offering on a property, you're ready to be able to purchase.
Okay, let's break this down into
Okay.
little actionable
Yeah.
chunks.
Yeah.
You said get your finances ready.
Yeah.
Now, what does that actually mean in practice?
In practice, that means if you're borrowing the money, make sure that you've seen a broker. I wouldn't advise you go direct to the bank. I'm not a mortgage advisor, so I can't advise you. But my experience, my own personal experience of within the residential estate agency, is that the problem you've got if you go direct to the bank, albeit people perceive that we bank with them, we're premier accounting with them, etc. People think that you get preferential treatment, but the reality is, unfortunately, you're just in a system as always. What we're finding at the moment is that when people are direct with the banks and don't use a broker, then we're finding that there's a delay between basically getting the initial telephone call in to get the full application in. So this is an example of what may slow your purchase down. Obviously, from the estate agency who you're buying from point of view, they're not really interested. They just want to know that you're ready and you've got your money in place. So from that point of view, we would always recommend you go to a mortgage broker.
And you talked about estate agents wanting to know that your money is in place. Here's
Yeah,
my
well,
bank.
this is. I mean, obviously there's two elements to purchasing. In effect, you've got a cash purchase, and you've got obviously funding from the bank and effectively a mortgage. So from a cash purchase point of view, the first thing you do is obviously make sure that your accounts are accessible, as long as you're happy to provide your data, your private information to the estate agent. Not everybody likes doing this, but I think you have to show some goodwill. The estate agents won't take the house off the market unless you show them the proof of funding. So from that point of view, whether it's cash, get your bank statements ready, get your passports ready, get your proof of address ready, get yourself packaged up, and then you're ready then to make an offer should you be buying cash. If you're buying on a mortgage, Nick, then the same principles apply. You're going to need your proof of deposit. So again, bank statement, proof of identification, proof of address, and then basically you then in effect will need your mortgage in principle. Now, not every broker will give you a mortgage in principle. at the outset, but the broker should be able to, if you've got a good broker, they should be able to talk to the estate agent for you and say, we've decided we're going to place them with whichever bank it is, and this is the person. They will effectively vouch for them, and then when they have done the official application, they are then ready to move to the application on the property. But a good mortgage broker should be able to talk to the estate agents on your behalf. You provide the details, whether your agreement in principle has been finalised, and they can say, look, we've decided Mr. and Mrs. X have decided they're going to use Barclays, HSBC, whichever lender it is, and then you can reassure the agent that you're ready to go. Or you could get the broker to provide you a mortgage in principle at that point. The only thing I'd say with a mortgage in principle, you might find that you might have a mortgage in principle with a lender, and then you decide to use a different bank. So from that point of view, you don't want to create any confusion. So I think that I would always get your offer in, get them to speak to your broker. They'll confirm their position, and then they can basically send them any information, i.e. agreement in principle, on your behalf.
Okay.
Get your bank statement ready with your proof of deposit and your IDs and proof of address. If you are, just something to be aware of, if family or friends are gifting you money to make a purchase, which is not, Nick, believe it or not, uncommon at the moment. There's a lot of mums, dads, whether UK based or overseas, that are helping the families basically move around, buy investments, buy residential. And the key is to provide, when you're making the offer, any good estate agent will ask you to provide a gift letter. So, and there's some wording on the gift letters that we always advise people to look at. Check it with a solicitor, and then basically, if they've got their gift letter ready, they're ahead of the other buyer should they be getting a gift.
Okay, so there's a lot of bits. There's a
Yeah, I
lot of
gather it's
stuff
probably a
here,
bit quick.
but
Yeah, I gather it was a bit quick, Nick.
okay. Well, let's break it down a tiny bit.
Okay.
The first thing is the proof of funds. So, and then you have bank statements and so on. You basically have evidence at the ready to say, yeah, I'm good for it,
Yep.
because promises don't count for much, because
Yeah.
there's so much competition for good properties. So
Correct. That's right.
you got to have
Yeah.
the paperwork. Going back to your main point with the mortgage in principle, are you saying that, yes, get a mortgage in principle, but bear in mind,
Yeah.
don't be married to that particular lender, because
Yeah,
somebody else will have a better
that's
deal?
the reality of it. But your mortgage in principle, that's what this estate agent will ask for. But
Right, so they need it just because then
they
they know
will
you're
do it. They
serious.
will
Yeah.
ask for that. But I think
Okay.
my experience of it, if particularly the broker rings on behalf of the clients and says, look, this is their position, they're putting X, Y, and Z down. I've dealt with them for X number of years. This is where we're going to place them. The mortgage in principle will follow, but basically, effectively, will vouch for them while they select a lender. They may have already selected a lender, but I think the broker's a really good place to start with. For me as an estate agent, if a broker rings me on behalf of a client, I feel that they are serious with where they're at, and I think that's a really good way of you being in a good position to purchase quickly. And the estate agents, we would certainly at Charles Louis take it more seriously. You can provide an agreement in principle, but the problem is sometimes the agreement in principles, they get an agreement in principle, the buyers, and then they change them. Because you've no real commitment. So yes, you need an agreement in principle because they won't take it off the market. But I think within that agreement in principle, I would always get my broker to. I'd say, look, my broker's going to ring you. This is my position. This is where I'm at. Documents have sent you. Please speak to my broker as well.
That's an interesting point. So you're saying that
They have
FCA
to tell the
regulate,
truth.
yeah, got it. And so that is
So they're
yeah,
a professional body,
that's really
well
good.
represented, aren't they? The FCA. It's it's part of the financial world, isn't it? So
Got it.
people,
Okay.
the standards have to be high, and people have to give true information, whether they're whatever they're providing to anybody, really accurate advice,
Right.
and obviously client confidentiality.
Okay. So the main tip here is get your documents in place, get
Yeah,
your mortgage in principle sorted out, get everything
yeah,
packaged up,
yeah,
then tell the estate agent, go talk to my mortgage advisor,
Yeah,
and if you want to just qualify me and all that stuff. And then mortgage advisor says, yeah, John
great.
Doe is good for the money, and
Yeah,
away
and
you go.
he'll give them an idea, loan to value. You can
Okay.
give. I would always give them your own synopsis of where you are, but I really think to strengthen your position, I always get my mortgage broker to
Hmm.
ring the estate agent, and have a chat once I've got everything sort of tipped up and agreed in principle, just to firm everything up.
Okay, but the main point about all of this is that if we want speed to completion, we want estate agents to take us seriously as buyers.
Yeah,
So, firstly, they give us better properties because the good stuff. Well, you're an estate agent,
yeah.
Jamie.
I
Your
think it.
motivation is presumably to turn stuff quick for a fair
Yeah, I think
price.
it, what you don't want is that we run a residential estate agency, selling residential houses and, for homeowners, but also buy to let. But I think what we, if somebody's investing and they're buying as a buy to let or buying it to turn to flip it, then the last thing that your client wants is they don't want to be waiting 8 to 12 weeks for a purchase. They don't want to be in a chain. They basically want, a quick completion. Quick completions aren't the easiest thing at the minute. COVID-19 seems to have slowed the process down from a legal point of view, but you can press in the right way and make decisions at the start of the transaction that should enable you to purchase quickly, and which will mean you don't have the estate agent chasing you every 2 days
Got
because
it.
you've not got what you need to be or where you need to be. So that's important.
Okay. Now we've got you, the client is all somebody, our specimen person. They're all packaged
Mm,
up. They've got their
mm,
proof, etc. And the estate
mm.
agent likes them because they just
Yep.
think, okay, we're going to get through this quickly, and they're not going to be
Yeah.
messing me around, which
Mm.
I like,
Yep. Yep.
which they like, should I say? Next thing is the question about like where to buy, and does that have any implication with completion times, like the general location?
No, I mean from a location point of view, the only thing I would say um, certain regions and areas, the local councils will turn the searches round in a different timescale. Most of the time, with the councils, you can do what they call an accelerated search, which will pay a little bit more, but you will get the searches back quicker, which again will enables you to get completion done quicker. So when you're buying locations, you are dependent on how quickly the um, the local councils can turn the searches round. But within that, there is an option with some of the local councils to expedite the search. Basically, accelerated search is what the
Okay.
terminology is. Okay.
Then the next question is the property. Now, in your experience being on the ground with these things,
Mm.
do you notice different completion times depending on types of property?
Yeah, obviously, a freehold property generally is easier to purchase because there isn't a leaseholder or a ground rent, so you've not got to get confirmation, from them to confirm that your ground rent's paid. A lot of the investment properties that people buy tend to be either freehold or what we call a long lease, which is 999 years with a small rent on them. So that's the norm. But sometimes if you're buying apartments, it can be a lot slower because sometimes the sellers don't organise the management pack quickly. So then the management pack they'll request on a leasehold flat might take 2 or 3 weeks to arrive.
Hmm.
What you find when you're buying flats, leasehold flats, is the managing company. When I've sold a couple of my flats over the last few years, the management company will have usually a staggered system. So basically, you pay X for 30 days, turn around, you pay Y for 14 days, turn around, and you pay another fee to get it turned around within sort of 3 4 days. So they tend to be a staggered fee. That is my experience over one of the recent sale that I've done, which was a little bit slower than expected, but I did everything I could to expedite it. But yeah, so leasehold flats, if you're buying them, check with the estate agent that the vendor has ordered the management pack if I sell anything leasehold, I would always instruct my solicitor immediately to pay for the management pack, and I would get the pack done. On expedited, so I wouldn't go for the cheaper money. I'd go for the more expensive cost, but to get the pack quicker, so that the buyer can complete quicker and it's provided to the lawyers quicker.
Okay.
Properties with 999-year leases, usually the ground rents are nominal, and there's usually a way to either, if they can't get hold of the freeholder, they may take an indemnity policy for missing landlord, or they may do an allowance of 5-7 years, because the rent's only £3, £4 a year, if that makes sense. So, so from that point of view, if your solicitor's on side and want to get it done quickly, there's a couple of different ways around things. But ideally, hopefully, something you've paid your £3.80 to whoever. Sometimes the neighbours collect the ground rents in these scenarios in the terraced houses. You pay your receipt. I live on a terrace row in Tottington in Bury, and up to a few years ago, we had an old lady in her 90s still collecting the ground rent.
Wow.
So there you go. But make sure if you are paying your ground rent that you've kept it up to date and you've got receipts of it, and you provide that to your solicitor at the start. That will slow anything down if you've not got receipts. So I haven't really thought about it, but probably a good way, if you pay your ground rent, which will be nominal on a long lease, check when you instruct your solicitor that you've got your receipts, or check with the freeholder that you've got you signed off for the last 3 years or whatever, if you can locate them and you're paying it. If not, your solicitor will do it for you.
Okay. And from a completion speed point of view, your preference is freehold?
I think you would, but yeah, I would, Nick. But I think people do as a world at the minute. We look at leasehold and freehold. A lot of leaseholds are nothing onerous about them, and it shouldn't make any difference really, to be honest, if you've got efficient people. And there's, like I said, you can indemnify against missing landlord, or you pay 7-8 years worth of ground rent. So it's different. If your ground rent's £250 on a new build house, then it's a slightly different animal. But on a long lease terrace, a lot of terraced houses are where we are, then really there's not a great deal. Obviously, ideally, yeah, freehold, but there's certainly nothing. It wouldn't, if I was looking at a freehold terrace and a long lease terrace in the same area, and one was a slightly better house, and I thought the investments were better, then it wouldn't matter whether it was leasehold or freehold.
Okay, let's move on to the next step. So you've proof of funds, you worked out the area, you worked out the property. Now you're ready to make an offer. How can you speed up the process to completion?
I think the first, we talked about getting your funds in place and your identification in place. The first thing I do when I'm buying anything is I ring my solicitor and say, I'm about to make a purchase. Can you check that my identifications are up to date, my passport, proof of address in the last 3 months? This is how I'll be funding it. So if it's a cash, you'll send them the information. And I would ask them then at that point, before I'd even found a property, if you've got a relationship with a solicitor, to open a draft file and basically get your client. They'll have a client care pack that'll be sent out for you. You can sign everything, put money on account, and then obviously when you find something, you're ready to go.
Right. Just to pause for a second, you're saying get prepared with your solicitor, get all the documents.
Certainly engage with them, and at least get your anti-money laundering done and their protocol forms done. And usually most lists will let you put, and they're all different in their protocol, but usually most lists will let you put a nominal amount of money on account to start open the file. But the key is the money laundering, anti-money laundering shouldn't take long. But again, if we're trying to do it as quick as we can, let's get organised before we get going with any purchase. So engage with a solicitor that you trust and you find are responsive. Tell them that explain to them you're keen to invest. Please can I do my protocol forms now, even before I found anything. Then one, that they've got a client that's committed to them, and secondly, you're ready, aren't you, when you find the right house? So that's personally how I would do it, a speed of purchase. Some solicitors might not want to do that, but I think if you get somebody that's really keen to get your purchase done quickly, efficiently, then I think that's a really good way to start.
Well, it makes sense because you're
Because
covering
everything's
off.
2 or 3 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever we do in the life, whether I'm doing it, solicitor's doing it, you're doing it, Nick.
Mm.
Everybody has the best intentions in the world, don't they? Until something comes along, and it might take you 2 or 3 days. It might then you get it to them. It's another 2 or 3 days before you know it. It's the weekend, and then before you know it, after that, it's another week gone by. So,
Mm.
yeah. So I think that would be my advice.
Okay. What's the typical conversation, the right kind of conversation with the estate agent? They know that you're all sorted out and ready to roll.
I think the first thing you're going to ask them is, what is the client looking for, if that makes sense. Um, in terms of a price, the estate at the minute, the estate agent will only probably say one thing to you: we're looking for the asking price or around it. So from that point of view, at the moment, the market is so competitive that most of the time, unless the price is ludicrously high from what else has been on the market, then most of the time people will be expecting as a seller to get their asking price. So I think yes, we all like to negotiate, don't we? But I think if you really want to show a genuine interest to get your deal tied up, then from that point of view, I think unfortunately the market's so busy at the minute that you do your homework, you do comparables, and unfortunately you'll have to put your offer in at the asking price.
There's a great temptation for investors just to lowball the number and hope
Yeah,
that it's all going to work out.
yeah, well, it's fine. We're obliged to put the offer to clients, and we always do, and that's what that's good practice. But the reality of it is, when internally when we look at it, let's say there's a house on at 200,000, we think it's market value. It's not excessively high, but we've had strong interest. At the minute, if in good areas, they might be doing a block of 10 viewings a day, etc. So what happens is, from the estate agent point of view, somebody comes in and makes a lower offer, but says, the funds may be in place. But then somebody else has come in and said, look, I don't want to mess around. I want the house. It's this X, Y, and Z. This is why we want it. Don't want to mess around. Please give your client the asking price. And again, that's as long as it's not. You need to make your own due care and diligent. But I bought my mother's house for about 8 years ago when my father died, and I'll give you a pretty good example of this. There was a house coming on the market overlooking a reservoir near us. They very, very rarely come on the market. The lady wanted, and I'm not suggesting anybody on this does this, but in the world does this, but for my mother, the house was so important. We'd moved her from a large detached house with a huge view over the countryside, and we were trying to downsize her into a local village, um, into a local village. Um, yeah, basically we're downsizing it, but we couldn't. We needed to find us something with a view, Nick.
Right.
So basically, the estate agent approached me. They knew that we were selling. She said, "Look, James, we're going to put it on the market. It's going on the market on Friday." They asked if we were interested. They knew we were downsized. They said, yes, we're interested. The lady wanted 180,000 for it. I asked her not to put it on the market, and I gave her 182. So I gave her a touch more than the asking price, Nick, on the basis my mother is elderly and it was important for us to secure it. So I said to them, look, we're happy to go. We don't want to mess around. We'll give you a touch more than the asking price.
Hmm.
Can you take instruction? Fortunately, we managed to secure a purchase on my mother's house, which is great, where she's happy with a view, etc. So I think the reality of it, I like to get a deal, don't we? We all
Mm.
like to get a deal, but the market, unfortunately, at the minute is incredibly competitive. So I'm not suggesting anybody pays too much because that wouldn't be sensible, but the market is moving and moving and moving. So I think those that sort of strong, and I think when you invest in as well, you might pay a bit more in the market at the time, but I think you hope in the future that you get the additional growth. So
Mm.
you may think at the time you've paid too much, but in future years you might find that you've done a bit better. At the same time, you might catch the market wrong, and you might buy it. You might buy it at the top of the market, but you've got your investment, you're getting your return on your money, and as long as you're not exiting to quickly to sell, then your loans are being serviced if you're borrowing money, and hopefully you get your rent over the years.
So the main point here is that if you mess the estate agent round in any
Yeah,
way, they're not going to take you seriously. And
yeah.
when it counts, i.e., maybe a property comes up which is off market, if they can trust you to not waste their time in any way, then
Mm.
you're going to get the first call and you get first grab at at a deal like this. And so
Mm.
with your mother's property, right
Yeah.
in saying you handle that in such a way that the thing never went onto market and
Yeah, I
she
mean, not
got what she
everybody will
wanted.
get that opportunity, but even if it was on the market, my view with that, because it was for my mother and I needed that house because it had the view and it was quite specific to her, and I knew that I wasn't going to get another chance at it, then unfortunately I had to go in stronger than I wanted. But that's that's the price you pay sometimes if you want the deal. So, but you need to do your own due care, or if you've got a consultancy working on your behalf, then they can look at the comparable evidence. What's realistically, I've looked at some houses this week for a couple of clients, and the asking prices have just been a touch too strong for this particular
Yeah,
client.
yeah.
And I'd like to advise them, say, yeah, great, go ahead with it and be bolshy with it, because then they get a house. Effectively, we'll get a fee, but it wouldn't have been the right advice. So we've said to them basically, unfortunately, it's just too strong on the offer.
Mm.
I don't think. I think the offer, what it's on at, they won't get for it. I think somebody will probably suggest they'll pay it, and then they'll get it under offer and try to start chipping the price. So, and then it'll go back to square one. So, yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Next question is about mortgages. Now, we touched on
Yep.
this before, getting a mortgage in principle. The gripe seems to be with the mortgage team that you've got to package your documents. You've got to give us all the
Yeah.
documents before we make the
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
If you miss a
Yeah.
document, that's
Yeah.
really
Well, the difficulty I have, and Dave can advise you on this because he's been doing it a long time, but my mortgage applications, etc. But he will not, unless I've provided everything that he wants up front, he will not put my application in. He will find out the ins and outs of it. If I am missing something that's critical, he'll assist me to guide me in the right way to get the information off the accountants or wherever. But I think the key is the brokers will want your docs packaged up, slotted into the lender, and away you go. Yes, there's always going to be queries, isn't there? And it can be long-winded and drawn out and protracted sometimes with if you're buying investments and you have other investments, etc. But my experience, and this is not from a financial background because I'm an estate agent, but from my experiences, get all your documents into the broker, get yourself a good broker, probably Charles Louis, and then from there you've got a package deal that's ready, and that will make your life a lot easier with the broker because they won't be chasing everything. And I think David can advise you on this, but from the bank's point of view, the less the work they have to do is obviously better, and the speed of transaction is quicker.
Let's move on to the hiring a solicitor.
My understanding of it, having bought and sold over 20 years and having dealt with, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of transactions, I think the key for any person buying or selling, the first thing is to make sure that you've got quick access to your solicitor. So they are responsive, very responsive to a telephone call. Everybody likes emails, don't they? And they will have to take your instruction as well by email as well. But I think from my point of view, if I ring my own solicitor, I know that I can pick a phone up to him, and if he's available, he will take the call, and even if he's not, he will ring me back within that day. The next day at the most.
Mm.
So I think the first thing to understand is just can you get hold of your legal advisor, and that is the big thing for me. You want to know that if they're going away for a couple of days, somebody else is picking the file up, things are being looked at. So I think it's, for me, the solicitor, obviously, yeah, you got to, as a solicitor, they know what they're doing from the legalities point of view. But I think from my point of view, the legalities are obviously massively relevant.
Hmm.
But I think the reality is, if you can get a solicitor that's really responsive to you, then go with that. Another thing I would always say with conveyancing, people would shop around for quotes. Oh, I can get a cheap quote. I can get this. I get that. My experience in life is you pay for what you get, if that makes sense. So, it's not always the case, but the particular solicitor I use, he's not cheap. He's probably middle of the road to expensive if I can compare it with local solicitors where we are. But I do have the privilege of being able to ring his mobile, get cuts of him very quickly. So, prices to be considered. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much, but at the same time, if your experience is when you're getting the quote, you're ringing them, you're getting quick information, they sent you the quote quickly, they're following you up the next day, which is probably a bit salesy, but effectively they are selling a service, aren't they? So
It's hard to work out how good a solicitor is because you might not know some.
I would want, if I'm getting a quote from somebody, I would want someone to follow me up. And it's not
Okay.
necessarily, I'm not necessarily that's the answer to everything, but I think it's you get to know them when whether people are hungry for your business and want to work with you. Now the difference you might get is once they've got you, the service might not be where it's at, but you don't know until you get into it. But I would certainly, if somebody wants to pick the phone up to and chat you, you might have some queries.
Mm.
They give you a quote. The solicitor rings you, or the secretary gives you a ring, or whoever. You have some queries. They pass the message on, and straight away, the lady or the gentleman solicitor who hopefully is engaging with you picks the phone up. Not immediately, but you get a response in a sensible period of time. Then you know that they want your work. Obviously, there will be information that has got to be done. Um, by email for instruction purposes, but that's fine. So I would the main thing is get a solicitor who's going to come back to you, ring you, talk to you. Obviously, they'll have to take a majority of the instruction via email, but I think a lot of these transactions, it sometimes can be easier to pick the phone up, and the good solicitor will pick you up, explain it to you, and follow it up with their email, subject to their internal procedures.
Okay. On the consulting side, we have so many horror stories with solicitors just taking forever. Is there anything you can do to speed up the process?
Well, I mean, if you're selling, then the first thing is to talk to your solicitor. If it's a leasehold flat, give them instruction to get the management pack done straight away. Get your documents in first. Ask them. They will send out the draft contract. And from from if you're selling that, that's a good place to start. If you're buying, when you instruct your solicitor, the first thing I would do, like I say, is get a file set up with them in advance. As soon as you found the house, you get on the phone to them or email them, and get your searches paid straight away. The searches can take 3 to 4 weeks. Like I say, you can do an accelerated search with certain local councils, but the key is to get this done, because this can hold you up, because it might take, especially when we were in the height of COVID, it was difficult to get hold of some of the local councils because they were inundated and obviously all working remotely and very congested. So it was, instead of taking 2 or 3 weeks, you're talking 4 to 6 weeks.
Presumably with solicitors, one of the big issues is they don't communicate with each
If you've got a responsive solicitor, things generally won't get missed, but if you've got a good estate agent or a good consultant, investment consultant or sourcer, however you word it, the key is for the solicitor just to be followed up. And there's a right way and a wrong way of following people up, isn't there, Nick?
Well, indeed.
Polite, courteous, respectful of people's time,
Mhm.
and there's nothing wrong with thanking people with gratitude for what they're doing. And I think sometimes if you approach that in the right way, you'll find that the people that are acting for you will be far more responsive to
Mm.
you. And I think a good agent, a good consultant will be able to assist that solicitor, just nudge things along. Sometimes things get sent, don't get picked up. That's
Well, I
not
think,
uncommon in any practice, is it? But
yeah.
the key is with it is, the people are following it up, and there's a way to talk to people within the industry and to get the most out of people. And I think that's the big thing. There's a time and a place sometimes for being very stern, but I think if you can just nudge people along in the right way, and with a bit of gratitude, like I say, Nick, you might feel that it's not 100% as you want it or as quickly as it is, but I would certainly say if you can just show a bit of thanks and praise in the right way, I think it goes a long way within any profession to help the speed of anything.
Well, moving on to surveying,
Okay.
where do people get caught out on speed of completion with the surveying process? Bearing in mind, properties have to
Yeah.
be surveyed
Yeah,
by.
of course they do. Yeah. Well, you have. I mean, you've got to have a survey to protect your interest. If you're buying cash, um, you're not going to have a mortgage valuation. You're going to get a home buyers report, which will obviously tell you the in depth, the crux of things. So, from that point of view, you need to get a survey. So the difficulty, I think, with surveys at the minute is everybody is very, very busy, if that makes sense, in the surveying world. So you might have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get your home buyer's report bought in if you're buying cash. So again, the first thing, you're going back to instructor and solicitor. You found the property. As soon as that offer's done, yeah, unfortunately, at one time you might say, well, we're going to wait to get the survey in before we do the searches. The difficulty with that is, unfortunately, it's going to cost you time, and unfortunately, you may lose out if things aren't as quick and the estate agent's pushing you. So I'm not saying it's best advice, Nick, but I think sometimes you've got to take a view with these things. If you're buying as an investment, it's different to a residential home. But I think you've got to sort of say, searches in, solicitor instructed, searches in, surveyed, instructed. Then from the estate agent's point of view, or who you're buying from, they will feel far more comfortable with your process. If you go, docs in, cat proof of funds in, offer accepted, morning Mr. Estate Agent, it's James, buying X house of you, I've paid for my searches today, I've spoke to some surveyors, the best I can get is about 3 weeks time, but I have paid for it and it is booked in. Then the people that you're buying from, straight away they know that you're committed, you paid for your searches. Average survey, home buyers probably up to £400-500, could be cheaper depending who you use, and searches are an average £200-300. So I think from the seller's point of view, you might effectively, on the upside, it might cost you, I don't know, and some broker fees you're buying and with a mortgage, it might cost you a few £100 up to £1,000 to start, but you've got that speed of completion. And unfortunately, then, you do run the risk that if the property's not quite what you hope for it, then, and there's something comes on the search, then you may lose your money. But, I think when you're buying investment in a busy, buoyant market, you've got to take a view on stuff.
There's arranging deposits. Well, that's pretty straightforward.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, with the deposits, though, we say it's straightforward, Nick. It doesn't always come across straightforward.
Okay.
I think the world's changing, isn't it, Nick, in terms of online banking, security, etc. How much you can transfer in one amount, if that makes sense. From if I'm purchasing, the first thing I would do is, I know if I've got to send across 50,000 well in advance of completion, I would be checking that out at pretty early days within the transaction. Speak to the bank, go in and see them if you're not able. The phones are very busy with the banks at the minute, so I know we don't want to be in public places, so it's mask, gloves at the moment, isn't it? But from that point of view, I think find out what the rules of engagement are with transferring money.
Right, so we reached the point where contracts are exchanged, deposits being paid. Is there anything else that can just hold things up?
We're pretty much there, Nick. Get your money in place. The solicitor will organise the completion dates for you. That's always difficult if you're in a chain trying to get a date from everybody, because obviously all the solicitors have to be ready to complete. But I think if you're buying cash. If you're buying cash, then you shouldn't really. Once you've got your money in, the legal guys have checked all your documents, you're happy to complete, then you should pretty much be able to get a date and move in. But like I say, just get your money organised and get it in place. You don't want to be rushing around last minute to stop what you got to go to the bank and do this. So preemptive what your bank will send and what they won't do, if that makes sense. And they will help you if you explain it's for a transaction.
And I suppose finally, you've got to pay stamp duty.
You need to try and understand at the beginning what the stamp duty is, so you know exactly what you're paying, so it doesn't come as a shock. But your solicitor will be able to advise you what the stamp duty is, subject to your whether it's your second house or it's an investment or whatever. Then the solicitor should be in a good place to advise you. But again, ask them at the start, what's the stamp duty? You might have an idea that it's 10k, but it might be 12 or 13k because you're not familiar with it. Yeah. But you can go on the government websites. The difficulty with stamp duty, I think, for people at the minute, has changed, hasn't it? And effectively is still changing from an estate agent point of view, solicitor point of view, buyer point of view, seller point of view. So I think your solicitor will be the best person geared up to advise you on stamp duty. So ask him. I suppose if you asked him at the start, it might change at the minute, but he will warn you and say, look, we're coming into the end of June, as everybody knows, the stamp duty thing's going to change again. So, but yeah, so try and get some advice on that before you not before you start, but a good, early days within the
Right.
transaction.
Well, I think we've gone from end to end on this one.
Yeah,
It's been
but I think that,
pretty machine
yeah,
gun fire, I've got to say, Jamie. Oh, goodness, you know a lot of stuff, I've got to say. Anyway,
I think it's just having done things a long time, but the key is communication. Organize yourself at the start. Get good professional people around you, and I know that it's not always easy, or there's different levels of perception of service, etc. But when I'm buying properties now, I've got a really good setup, and I know what I can do with my bank. I know who's going to act for me, and I know who's going to do the survey for me if it's a cash purchase.
mm,
And so it's just organised uh, communication. I think as well, as much as anything, do things with a smile on the face when you're talking to people. It
well,
goes a
yeah,
long way. It
it's
goes a
true.
long way when whether it's with your estate agent, your solicitor, your surveyor. I just think if you're a naturally positive person, people are more likely to give you that service and help you. And I'm not saying that makes it right
It's
for
very true.
anybody to get
I agree.
bad service, but I think there's a way to ask people, and it's in my experience of it, if I want something doing, I need it doing. I don't want to press people in the wrong way. So I say, look, I really need some help with this. I'd be really grateful if you could help me. It might sound a bit soft and bit weak, but I think you'll find my experience is if you give people that respect, they hopefully give you that back. So and get your speed of completion done. So smile on your face, good team around you, get your money in place, and then fingers crossed you can buy your investment that you want.
Well, Jamie, on that note, thank you very much for this. And everyone out there, hope you enjoyed that. It's been
Yeah, thank you.
fascinating.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it actually. It's not something I really enjoy doing, but yeah, it's good to talk about what I've got a reasonable understanding of over the years. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening.
All
Thank you,
right.
Nick, for
And
helping.
until next time, good investing.